Breaking news out of college basketball. Coach John Calipari has officially said goodbye to the Kentucky Wildcats. In a video he released on social media, Coach Cal said it's time for the university and the fans to hear a new voice after 15 seasons as the head coach in Lexington. Late on Sunday night, our Matt Norlander reported that Calipari is nearing a deal to become the next head coach at Arkansas. Now, Coach Cal did not mention the Razorbacks in his video, only saying that there have been some opportunities presented to him. Here's a portion of what he had to say in that announcement.
This is a dream job. It was my dream job. Anybody in our profession looks at the University of Kentucky in basketball and said, that is the bluest of blue. The last few weeks, we've come to realize that this program probably needs to hear another voice, that the university as a whole has to have another voice giving guidance about this program that they hear. And the fans need to hear another voice. We've loved it here, but we think it's time for us to step away and step away completely from the program.
There you hear it there from Coach himself. Athletic Director Mitch Barnhart also weighing in on what will be the end of an era in Lexington. He said this on X, quote, "We're appreciative of John Calipari leading our program for the last 15 years, adding to the legacy of championship success at Kentucky. We're grateful to John for his many contributions to the university and our state, both on and off the court." Now let's welcome in CBS Sports college basketball analyst Mike O'Donnell to the show. Mike, this obviously came to surprise on Sunday when the news first came out, but now we're hearing directly from Coach Cal himself. When you listen to that full 3-minute video, we didn't have a chance to play it, but obviously just hearing how passionate he was. He said this was a dream job for him at Kentucky, but now it's time to move on. What do you make of that statement from Coach Cal?
Classy statement. Could have not made that statement. Could have just, you have the meeting with Kentucky Athletic Director Mitch Barnhart and say, hey, thanks, we'll see you later. I've got to step away and kind of recharge myself. It doesn't feel like we're going to be able to grow at Kentucky. He could have just done that internally and then maybe done a press conference, but I watched it twice. I think it was a pretty classy thing to do. He's very thankful, extremely appreciative. Obviously, you list out some of the accomplishments, and it wasn't as if it was kind of like, hey, thanks but no thanks, or I can't believe you guys are pushing me out. It didn't feel like he had a massive amount of animosity towards Kentucky or the fan base in that video. Don't know Coach Cal like that. Who knows? But I thought it was a classy statement, and certainly I think that's a divorce from a reality that's been very productive for Coach Cal, the Kentucky players, and the Kentucky fan base in the last 15 years. You just felt like you needed a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, you mentioned the divorce. I think that's a perfect way to put it. In terms of Coach Cal's resume at Kentucky, I mean, it's extensive. He had that national championship in 2012. He's a Basketball Hall of Fame inductee, 6 Final Four appearances, 15 conference championships. I mean, the numbers and the stats and the resume just, it keeps going and going. But the problem, Mike, is that it's been a while since they've won a national championship. And we talked about this earlier. Kentucky's a program who is expected to win championships. The fans, of course, were mixed, I think, in terms of if they wanted him to stay or him to go. In your opinion, is this a coach that can still win championships at another program?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're talking about the best college basketball recruiter in the last 15 to 20 years. He is going to get players at Arkansas. They are going to win at Arkansas. And he's going to be able to build a roster with basically an NIL bucket of money from Tyson Foods and Walmart. Two of the biggest donors and supporters of Arkansas basketball are the owners of Tyson Foods and Walmart. He's going to have a significant bank of cash to go get players. That's the NIL world. He's going to recruit freshmen. We don't know which players that he's talked to in high school already say, hey, are you ready to come to Arkansas? Because the loyalty to Coach Cal from AAU coaches, high school coaches, I mean, everybody knows if you play for Coach Cal, you're going to have the opportunity to play in the NBA. If Antonio Reeves, Rob Dillingham and Reed Sheppard, if they all get drafted, which we all assume that those 3 players are going to get drafted, he'll have 50 players in the NBA over those 15 years. How impressive is that?
I know. He could build like 3 NBA teams with who he's had come through his program. It's just been fantastic. I mentioned the fans earlier because he's been linked to Arkansas. Or Matt Norlander, of course, sharing that news with us earlier in the week. He made no announcement of that, just that there's been some opportunities that have been presented to him. But how should fans be feeling with this change? Because as I mentioned, there were some who, when the season ended the way it did, they were like, get him out. There's others who were saying, no, the history, he's our guy. So if you're a fan here, how are you feeling about the move? And do you have a candidate maybe that you want to come in and step in and sort of continue to keep Kentucky in the conversation here?
You know, it's a little bit like in life, right? The extremes are always the loudest.
Sure.
And you have one side of it of the extreme Kentucky fan base who wanted Coach Cal gone. From 5 years ago, 4 years ago, the chatter had started to build, and it always felt ridiculous. Well, now we're at a place where Kentucky wasn't going to fire him, but Coach Cal kind of looked at it and said, I'm ready to move on. The other side of the extreme is, are you nuts? Or who else are you going to get in college basketball that is better than Coach Cal from a recruiting standpoint, from a coaching standpoint? He's a top 5 coach in college basketball. So now we're talking about who's next. You're only allowed to whisper the name Rick Pitino with Kentucky. I don't think it's going to happen. I would be shocked if it does. I think if he was 61 years old, it would certainly happen yesterday. But Mark Pope played at one of the best Kentucky teams ever. He's done a phenomenal job at BYU. First year in the Big 12, he was a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. Scott Drew, I think, is going to be a name really at the top of the list. Won a national championship at Baylor. His ability to build programs, I think, fits with what Kentucky's going to be looking for. Obviously, Bruce Pearl's the name's going to be thrown around. Multiple other names are going to be thrown around, but I got to be honest with you. You know, if you're Kentucky, you want a great coach, obvious statement of the century, but do you also want to win the press conference a little bit? Yeah, you know, Shaka Smart, I think, needs to be in that conversation. What he did to reinvent himself, coming from Texas, going to Marquette, that would be a conversation where, this is massive hypotheticals. If Shaka Smart goes to Kentucky, everybody in the country would be like, whoa, that's a good hire. And he's not being talked about enough in that. But I think right now, Scott Drew's at the top of the list. But don't throw Shaka Smart, you know, out of that lineup there.
I actually like that. Whenever we were watching the news sort of unfold earlier in the week, I said, Rick Pitino. But then I also said,
you can only whisper it.
Shaka Smart. I think he's done an incredible job, to your point there at Marquette. Mike O'Donnell helping us make sense of this crazy move that is happening in the college basketball world. Mike, we certainly appreciate your time. Here's a look at the odds to win the 2025 national title. The way too early odds, I should say, by the way. We need to give this some time to breathe. But nonetheless, Duke at the top of the list. They, of course, are headlined by Cooper Flagg and their upcoming recruiting class. So not really a surprise that they're favored there. The 2-time reigning champions UConn at plus 1,500. Kentucky, without a coach, without a game plan as it stands right now, still in the mix, though, to win a national title next season.